4 minutes from 95th. Bishop Ford inbound tight approaching Cottage Grove. Crash on the left side. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
More of Chicago's Morning Answers coming your way next. Now your official Chicagoland weather forecast. Cooler today. We'll see the sunshine, though. Temperature going up to 67 degrees. Under a clear sky tonight, we'll go down to 53. Then it'll be breezy in the morning tomorrow. Otherwise, a cool day with parts of sunshine mixed with clouds. High temperature 63. Right now, it's 61 degrees. Your next news update in 30 minutes. For continuous coverage of news, traffic, and weather, go to 560theanswer.com. I'm Elisa Z. Now more of Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2 on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Attorney General Barr suggesting that prosecutors look at potential sedition charges against some of those individuals throughout America who have been perpetrating violence on the streets of our big and not so big cities.
Yep.
He also reportedly recommended a review of Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin, a former U.S. attorney, a review of her conduct during the Autonomous Zone episode in Seattle to see if she could be held criminally liable for not clearing that autonomous zone more quickly than police ultimately did.
And ultimately, a kid was shot, a 19-year-old kid, fatally shot.
And turning over a police precinct to the mob, among other things. Jenny Durkin, incredibly, a former U.S. attorney, of course, a Barack Obama appointee.
It's the summer of love.
And, and this is being, the howling against Barr, and Jenny Durkin calls it chilling that such a look-see at her for criminal negligence could be occurring in the Department of Justice. Oh, it's so chilling. Barr has also talked about the Department of Justice, and they are doing some of this, looking at the financing of these organizations. These are revolutionary organizations like Black Lives Matter. And there's a great piece I mentioned yesterday by Mike Gonzalez over at the Daily Signal, the Heritage Foundation's publication. Black Lives Matter co-founder partners with pro-communist China group. That's interesting, isn't it? Go to the website Black Futures Lab, a venture of Black Lives Matter founder Alicia Garza, one of the self-described Marxist-trained activists. Click on the donate button at Black Futures Lab. It will ask you to send your money to an obscure organization, the Chinese Progressive Association, explaining that Black Futures Lab is a fiscally sponsored project of the Chinese Progressive Association. Does the Chinese Progressive Association want to destroy the nuclear family too? Is that the intersection? I don't know. Well, a look at the Chinese Progressive Association, as Mike Gonzalez did, founded in San Francisco in 1972 during the Marxist-oriented Asian American movement of the day. Today, and persists today with an active chapter in Boston, it is a promoter of Chinese communism. They recycle the People's Republic of China's propaganda. According to an authoritative 2009 Stanford University paper tracing its early days to the present, which can be found at Marxist.org, just in case there's any confusion, the Chinese Progressive Association began as a leftist pro-People's Republic of China organization promoting awareness of mainland China's revolutionary thought and workers' rights and dedicated to self-determination, community control, and quote-unquote serving the people. So for 50 years, this organization has been, actively promoting the Marxist revolution. Now they're partnering with Black Lives Matter. What does that have to do with equal opportunity for Black Americans? What does that have to do with equal protection under the law? What does that have to do with police reform? What does that have to do with public safety? It has nothing to do with it. It's a revolutionary organization, and one of the tactics of said revolutionary organizations, as in the 60s, is violence. And you've had the intellectuals, quote unquote, behind the lawlessness, suggesting as much, from Nicole Hannah-Jones, the 1619 Project, to these Black Lives Matter Marxist-trained activists. And you want to tell me that Attorney General Barr is wrong when he says that the whole underpinning of what you see manifest on the streets of America needs to be investigated thoroughly and prosecuted where appropriate? And if that includes mayors of big cities, then it includes mayors of big cities. We need to establish the rule of law in this country if we're going to have a country. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Marc Lotter. He's the Director of Strategic Communications for the Trump campaign. Marc, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I know there's a lot of discussion about which messages need to be amplified on the campaign, and you get endless advice and counsel, almost all of it unsolicited, so I'll just join in that chorus. But it seems to me, as much I know people pocketbook issues, and that's one of the cliches of politics, and I understand the importance of the COVID response and getting to a vaccine and continuing to provide the resources necessary to treat the ill. But if you don't have the rule of law, you don't have civil society. It seems to me, as long as this persists, and it seems it's going to persist well beyond November, regardless of who wins, this needs to be the president's priority.
Well, and it absolutely is one of the president's priorities, and that's why you've seen the president talk so much about it. And I know he's absolutely honored that the major police organizations of our country have gotten behind him for re-election, whether it's the Fraternal Order of Police nationally, whether it's Chicago PD, NYPD. I mean, you can go up and down the line, and there's a reason for that, because they know that the president is standing with the men and women who put on that badge, and they answer your 911 call at your most dire time. And when you hear Joe Biden call police the enemy, or Kamala Harris compare them to the Klan, that's not America. That's not what we stand for. And as the vice president said last night in Wisconsin, that there's a false choice that liberals want us to make, that we can either have social justice or law and order. And that is a false choice. We can have both. The president has absolutely called out police brutality when it's occurred. He understands we need to have social justice, but we need to have law and order. And we need to make sure that we're celebrating and supporting the 99.9% of the men and women out there who are putting their lives on the line to protect us and our families.
Was that police siren in the background? Was that for dramatic effect, or was that just happenstance? Do you carry that with
okay?
you? Switching over to Joe Biden and the week that was for Team Biden, a good piece at firstthings.com, in addition to a good book by George Newmar, who we're going to speak with next hour. But the idea that Joe Biden is a moderate, which is an idea that about a third of individuals, likely, or registered voters, I should say, surveyed, and an August poll found to be the case, that they believe he is a moderate. Well, that is just not true based on the agenda that he's adopted. And I wonder, I know you've got the first debate coming up in a couple of weeks, and this will be an opportunity to really take the fight to Joe Biden on these topics. But do you feel like the campaign is being successful enough in conveying that not only is Joe Biden beholden to the left, he's completely adopted their policy agenda, as we saw this week with his big climate change speech?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, Joe Biden has been, the biggest help in that matter for us just by every time he opens up his mouth. I mean, let's think about it for a moment. He's proposing a $4 trillion tax increase. That's more than twice as much as even Hillary Clinton proposed. And when you look at his climate, when you look at his agenda to put millions of people in energy out of work, when you talk about and hear him talk about, imposing the Green New Deal and driving up people's energy costs, when you see that he talks about defunding the police, these are not moderate positions. I mean, even Joe Biden, who for 50 years in Washington, D.C., stood by and supported the Hyde Amendment, which banned taxpayer funding of abortion, now that he's running in 2020 in the new Democrat Party, he has had to flip-flop on that, and he now supports taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. These are not moderate positions. They're one of someone who is completely beholden to the radicals that have taken over the Democrat Party.
And also, he shouldn't be able to get away with class envy politics because his platform is not friendly to the bottom quintile in society. There's a really good piece by Casey Mulligan, who's an economist at the University of Chicago, about the real cost of Biden's plan. And he estimates that looking at the regulatory costs, the hidden costs. He says only people making 250 grand or more are going to see any tax increase. However, as Casey Mulligan writes, the poor would suffer most under Biden's platform, dividing the U.S. households into 5 income groups, estimating the regulatory cost for each quintile. The cost to the bottom group amount to 15% of its total income, representing a burden equal to all the taxes they currently pay. This group would experience part of the cost in lower wages, but the biggest bite would be in diminished purchasing power due to higher prices for energy, cars, other consumer goods. By contrast, the top quintile would suffer the least from regulatory restrictions, a 2.2% implicit tax on the highest earners, 7 times less than on the lowest earners. That seems to me, I know it's a bit complicated, but it's in an hour and a half, that's something that President Trump may want to tag him with as well.
Well, and all you also have to do is just look at the report that just came out from the Census Bureau earlier this week, that prior to the pandemic hitting, so last year, you saw income growth for the people at the bottom more than the people at the top. You saw black incomes rise faster than white incomes. We saw the highest home ownership for black Americans since 2009. Hispanic and Latinos have the highest home ownership on record. And this is all from the U.S. Census Bureau, and we can see it coming back. That's one of the biggest questions we've got to ask ourselves. We see this economy coming back from the pandemic. We've already recovered nearly half the jobs that were lost, and we're not done. The experts had predicted that unemployment would still be around 10% at the end of the year. We're at 8.4%, and it's only August, and we're not done. Yet Joe Biden's out there talking about shutting things down again, national mask mandates that he knows that are illegal and he knows that he can't do, all just to placate, the radical left. And he wants to close this economy up again while we're on the rebound.
Yeah, and let's talk about Joe Biden. I mean, less than 2 weeks, we have our first presidential debate. Do you think he has the mental fortitude to last 2 hours in the ring with President Trump?
Well, I'm not sure anybody has the mental fortitude to last 2 hours in the ring with President Trump. But, I'll let people decide that for themselves. The question is ultimately is not as how he performs, because, look, this guy's been in Washington, D.C. for 50 years. Yeah, he's run for president 3 times. He's debated just in the Democrat primary this time around 12 times. So he is an absolutely skilled debater. But I think regardless of how he performs, people should be mostly afraid of what he says. When he talks about his plans, when he talks about his agenda, which will shut our economy down, which will cause people's energy rates to go up. I mean, my goodness, it was just a couple of weeks ago, the mayor of Los Angeles was sending out a tweet saying people need to turn their air conditioning up to 78 degrees, turn off their lights and their TVs at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or there would be blackouts. That's a preview of Joe Biden's America, because we know that their radical energy plans aren't enough to be able to supply American need, which is going to shut down people's lives, shut down the economy at a time when we need more jobs, not less.
Has there been any attempts to negotiate after the fact about as to the terms of the September 29th debate or any of the other debates with respect to things like fact checkers that have been suggested by op-ed columnists like Tom Friedman, or maybe Joe Biden would like a teleprompter like he uses for late night TV interviews or anything like that?
Well, I mean, we're always in conversations with the Presidential Debate Commission, which actually sponsors and hosts the debate. So all those kinds of things are always under negotiation. I'm not going to get into the specific details about what's being negotiated, but the key is that the president wants to actually get on the debate stage. We'll see. Joe Biden says he does. We'll see if he gets on the debate stage 3 times with the president.
Do you have concerns that he won't? Do you have concerns that he won't show up?
Well, you've got a lot of people out there trying to provide cover for him, like Nancy Pelosi and people saying he shouldn't debate at all. But right. I think the American people aren't going to tolerate that, nor should they. Most Americans won't even buy a car without taking it for a test drive and kicking the tires.
Right.
And yet you got major Democrats that are so afraid of Joe Biden and what he might do that they're saying that he shouldn't even get up there, and that people should just vote on how they feel without actually seeing these two men standing on the same stage talking about the same issues at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, he's running for the most important job in the world. I mean, please.
He is Marc Lotter. He's the Director of Strategic Communications for the Trump campaign at Team Trump. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Jay Farner, CEO of Rocket Mortgage. Making the right financial decisions has never been more important. We can help guide you to those right decisions now, when they matter most. Mortgage rates are near historic lows, so when you call 833-8ROCKET or visit us